Am I the antagonist for not correcting my little brother when he made racist jokes? I'm a 19-year-old female with a 13-year-old brother named Adam. He has a group of close friends aged 13 to 15 who I try to be a good example for. I have conversations with Adam about inappropriate behavior to prevent our strict parents from punishing him excessively. However, I also strive not to be overly controlling. I'm now questioning whether I mishandled a recent situation. Adam and our family are Romanian, while his friends come from different racial and ethnic backgrounds, including Black, Mexican, and Indian. Adam is one of the few white people in his friend group. Occasionally, their friends make jokes about Adam's ethnicity, and he responds by joking about their ethnicities. For example, one of his Black friends might make jokes about vampires and stealing wallets, and Adam might respond by making jokes about eating chicken or picking cotton. It is important to note that these jokes are not meant to be offensive, and both parties find them humorous, as is typical among middle schoolers. I want to clarify that if Adam were ever racist towards a stranger or someone who clearly does not appreciate those jokes, I would unequivocally find that unacceptable and address it with him. I have already spoken to him about keeping the racist jokes within the confines of his friend group, and never joking about race or ethnicity in other contexts. Essentially, I encourage him to restrict these jokes to the comfort zone of his friends, where no harm is being caused. I see no reason to intervene when no harm is done. Recently, my friend Leah, a 19-year-old white female, was present when my brother made racist jokes towards his friends. It was evident that everyone was laughing uncontrollably, indicating that there was no tension or animosity. They were simply goofing around. As soon as Leah heard the jokes, her jaw dropped and she appeared ready to confront my brother. I assured her that it was okay, as this is their usual way of joking around and nobody was being hurt. However, she turned to me and vehemently criticized me, labeling me a terrible big sister for condoning racist behavior in my brother. I explained to her that there is a significant difference between this lighthearted banter among friends and blatant racism towards someone who does not appreciate it. I suggested she mind her own business in this particular case. I also made it clear to Leah that I would never want my brother to genuinely harbor racist beliefs or behave in a racist manner because my family and I have personally experienced racism due to our Romanian ethnicity. I adamantly reject the notion that I may be encouraging racism. In response, she burst into laughter, claiming that I cannot comprehend true racism because we are all white. I retorted by pointing out that this was not a competition over who has experienced more racism. After a heated argument, she stormed off, and I am now writing this post roughly 2 hours later. Am I truly being a bad sister? Am I the asshole? While racial jokes can be problematic and offensive, in this particular situation, it seems like your brother and his friends engage in this type of banter without any malicious intent or harm being caused. You've spoken to your brother about the importance of not making these jokes outside of their friend group, showing that you understand the boundaries and are actively involved in guiding him. Your friend Leah should not have overstepped and criticized your approach without understanding the context and dynamics at play. It's unfair for her to dismiss your experiences with racism based on your ethnic background. Am I the antagonist for telling my friends that my family is not rich? I'm a 20-year-old female, and I have had the same group of best friends who are 19, 20, and 21 years old since childhood. My family and I have always welcomed them as additional daughters, and their families have a good relationship with mine as well. We have a close bond, just like siblings, and we argue over trivial matters regularly. However, there is one recurring argument that makes me extremely uncomfortable. My family immigrated from Jamaica, and the strong work ethic has been ingrained in us. Occasionally, my parents treat themselves to nice things after saving for years, or we go back to Jamaica every 2-4 years. We have moved twice, and each house we have lived in is at least 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and 3 stories. The thing is, this is a result of my father working a well-paying but demanding job with long hours, and my mother pursuing her education to become a teacher. Our houses start off small in value when we first buy them, and then we save up and expand or build as we live there. When my friends come over, they comment on what we have and say things like, "You're so rich," and initially we took it as a compliment. However, over time, it started making us slightly uncomfortable, especially me. We never had an abundance of money, and unexpected bills were always difficult, not to mention the medical expenses due to our family's health complications. The problem now is that we recently moved to another state due to various issues. My father had to quit his old job because it was causing him too much stress, and my mother had to find a new teaching position in the new state. Both of these changes resulted in a pay cut, and now my father is working 2 jobs to help make ends meet. I am currently attending university in our original state, and the cost is incredibly high. Both my younger sibling and I are in therapy, although I have reduced the frequency of my sessions to manage expenses. Our family pets, particularly my service dog, also accumulate bills quickly. All of these factors, among others, take a toll on our finances. Despite knowing most of this information, my friends still frequently make comments like, "You're so rich and I'm jealous." Usually I laugh it off and thank them before changing the subject or politely mentioning that we are not actually rich. But I became frustrated with constantly hearing these remarks, And recently, I lost my temper and confronted them about it in detail. I explained how we are not rich and how uncomfortable it makes me feel when they say those things. I suppose after years of working hard to help my family overcome difficulties and witnessing the hardships we faced this year, I couldn't keep it in any longer. My friends were shocked by my outburst and they became upset with me. They were annoyed for the remainder of their stay. Although we have since made up, I don't think they truly understand why I feel this way, and I don't know how to explain it without sounding entitled or arrogant. So, am I wrong for getting angry at my friends and telling them that I am not rich? It's understandable that you got frustrated and expressed your feelings after years of hearing your friends make comments about your family's financial situation. You have every right to feel uncomfortable and upset by their remarks. It seems that you have tried to politely address this issue in the past, but your friends haven't fully understood or respected your perspective. You're not being entitled or arrogant by wanting your friends to be sensitive to your family's financial struggles. It's important for them to be aware of your situation and not make assumptions based on material possessions. Explaining to them once again how your family's financial circumstances have changed and the impact it has had on your lives might help them understand your perspective better. Communication is key in any friendship, and it's important for your friends to be supportive and understanding. If they continue to make these comments after you've expressed your feelings, it might be worth reconsidering the dynamics of your friendship. Am I the antagonist for telling my sister that she's the reason her kids don't have a father? So I, 27-year-old female, have a sister named Melanie, 25-year-old female. She currently has 2 children, a son named Sam, 7-year-old boy, and a daughter named Avery, 4-year-old girl, and she is currently 14 weeks pregnant with her 3rd baby. The night Melanie graduated high school, she intentionally convinced her boyfriend at the time to have unprotected sex. 2 months later, she showed up at his parents' house with a positive pregnancy test, assuring him that everything would be okay. She suggested they could get married at a courthouse and have a proper wedding after college. She believed they wouldn't have to worry financially since his parents were well off, and he planned to pursue a degree in engineering. However, their relationship ended before the baby was born. Our parents took care of the baby so that Melanie could still attend college. During her time in college, she met a guy in one of her classes who had dreams of becoming a doctor. She spent several months pursuing him until they finally entered a relationship. However, she soon found out that he had no interest in being a father, at least not for a long time. Despite this, she stopped using birth control and got pregnant again. He initially tried to stay, but he eventually got accepted into a medical school across the country and left without much explanation. Now my sister is pregnant with an older married man with whom she has been having an affair for the past year. She has been claiming that he and his wife are separated and getting a divorce. However, as soon as she told him about the pregnancy, he broke up with her and returned to his wife. It seems to me that he never had any intention of leaving his wife based on my sister's own admission while ranting about the situation. She had hoped that the baby would finally convince him to leave his wife, but it didn't happen. The other night, while my sister and I were both at our parents' house, she started complaining again about her previous partners and how they are never there for their children. She made negative generalizations about men, calling them irresponsible and only interested in short-term relationships. Fed up with her constant complaints, I told her that the problem isn't with the men. I pointed out that the reason her kids don't have a father figure is because of her own poor choices. I suggested that maybe, if she stopped trying to force guys into a parental role, she might find someone who genuinely loves her and her children and wants to be an involved parent. This caused her to start crying and yelling, and my parents had to intervene and take her out of the room. My mother later told me that it was better for me to leave, so I did. The next day, both my mother and father scolded me for how I handled the situation. I honestly don't think I was wrong, but apparently my sister is still upset about it. While it's understandable that you may be frustrated with your sister's choices and actions, your response was harsh and hurtful. It's important to approach sensitive subjects with empathy and kindness, especially when discussing someone's personal life and their children. Rather than lashing out and blaming your sister, it would have been more productive to express your concerns in a calm and compassionate way. It's clear that your sister has made some poor decisions in the past, but it's also important to recognize that everyone makes mistakes and deserves support. By attacking her and making her feel responsible for her children growing up without a father figure, you further added to her distress. It's important to remember that she is already dealing with the consequences of her actions and may be seeking understanding or guidance, even if she doesn't express it explicitly. Apologizing to your sister for your harsh words and showing empathy towards her situation would be a step in the right direction. Am I the antagonist for wanting to sue my parents? I'm a 22-year-old with 3 siblings aged 10, 18 named Samantha, 18, Andrew 15, and Jessica, 10. When Samantha was 6, our mom discovered that she was being bullied in school and decided to homeschool her. Our grandmother, who was our mother's mother, took on the responsibility of homeschooling her. Since then, all of my siblings have been homeschooled. I should note that there was a verbal agreement between our parents that our mom would stay home to take care of us and homeschool us. In 2016, our grandmother passed away, which deeply affected our mom. She turned to drinking and became addicted to her phone. Our parents separated, but they never got divorced. Since our mom was supposed to take care of us and homeschool us, our dad allowed her to stay home. Our mom moved into a different room and would stay up all night drinking or go out until the bars closed and then come home to drink all night. As a result, she would sleep all day. Due to their separation and our mom's lifestyle, she began going out with many different guys. It reached a point where I couldn't keep track of their names. This became a frequent topic of conversation with her, and I began to resent her for it. Unfortunately, I am a people pleaser, and my parents took advantage of this by using me as a secondary caregiver. When we lost our grandmother, things got even worse. After high school, I left for higher education in 2020. Going to college was incredibly difficult for me because it felt like I was betraying my family. While I was away, my siblings would FaceTime me on the iPad, and our dad would message me every day. The only time I heard from my mom was if she had found a new guy. I couldn't complete my first year of college because my dad fell ill. When I returned home, it was as if I had never left. I became a second mom, taking care of my dad and my siblings. Our mom was either drinking or sleeping most of the time. Over time, we've had conversations about why I seemed to hate her, and I offered her options for change. I even tried to impress upon her that her own children would grow up without her if she didn't get herself together. Recently, I am still living in my parents' house due to the state of the housing market. And yes, I am still taking care of my siblings, despite working a full-time job. I try to teach them whenever I can, but it's frustrating because it isn't even my responsibility. Samantha is 18 and hasn't received an education, while Andrew and Jessica are entering their teenage years. They are socially unaware and their academic level is far behind where it should be. I can't simply catch them up and transfer them to school. I have no idea what to do. I don't want my siblings to go through any more traumatic experiences. Our mom is wasting her life on alcohol, and even though my dad has been sick, he hasn't done much to address the situation. I'm 22 years old and haven't been able to start my own life. Am I the asshole for considering involving the state? It's understandable that you feel frustrated and overwhelmed by taking on the responsibility of caring for your siblings while your parents are unable to fulfill their role. The situation at home is clearly detrimental to your siblings' well-being and education, and it's important to prioritize their future. Getting the state involved might be necessary to ensure that your siblings receive the education and support they need. It's crucial to remember, however, that involving the state can have serious consequences for your family dynamics. It's important to consider all options and reach out to other family members, friends, or local organizations before making this decision. Seeking advice and support from professionals, such as social workers or counselors, can also help guide you through this difficult situation. Ultimately, your siblings' well-being should be the priority, even if it means making difficult decisions. Am I the antagonist? My husband is doing what I asked. I think it's too late. I, 47 years old, female, have been in a relationship with my husband, 51 years old male, for 27 years. During this time, he has never actively searched for a job unless absolutely necessary. One reason for this is his ADHD. Because he doesn't actively seek jobs, he ends up getting laid off and remains unemployed until he is forced to find work again. Unfortunately, this has resulted in me making poor career decisions for financial reasons. We sought counseling, which led to him receiving an ADHD diagnosis and finding a new job. He excelled in that job, eventually earning a six-figure salary within 5 years. As a result, I became a stay-at-home mom, and he promised that I would never have to work again as a thank you for supporting him for so long. However, his role as the primary breadwinner led to negative changes in his behavior. He became mean, started vaping, and made plans almost every night. Although I loved being a mom, my life would have been perfect if not for the unpleasant presence of a brooding jerk vaping in my basement. Then he lost his job and his behavior improved. I took on 2 part-time jobs and went into savior mode to support us. He, on the other hand, spent his time with the kids in front of the TV and did nothing. It didn't take long for me to realize that I'd made a huge mistake. Almost 2 years later, he finally found another job. I quit one of my jobs, but I couldn't reach the same level of financial stability I had when I was solely a stay-at-home mom. Eventually, I suffered a minor stroke due to stress. 6 months after his new job, he was fired. I learned my lesson. I still had the one job, which had evolved into my own business, but it wasn't profitable. When I tried to talk to him about finding another job, he would instead focus on growing my business. I repeatedly told him that it wouldn't be enough to support the family and that he needed a new job, but he dismissed my concerns. When our savings were depleted, he finally found another job, but it came with a pay cut and expensive insurance. I pleaded with him to search for something better, but they were paying for his certifications. However, they eventually canceled his classes due to a lack of staff. Whenever we discussed finances, he only talked about my business. I explained that it couldn't sustain the family and he needed a new job, but he acted as if I underestimated the business's potential. I eventually gave up. The stress of relying on a business that made at most $800 a month to support the family became too much. I took on a second part-time job, hoping I could still salvage my business, but things aren't looking promising. I'm incredibly saddened by this situation. I keep trying to discuss it with my husband, but he downplays the issue. He claims that my second job is just part-time and that I can quit anytime, implying that I shouldn't treat it as a long-term solution. However, for me it is. I can't rely on him. Recently, he discovered that one of his co-workers continued the classes he was forced to drop out of. This infuriated him, and now he's actively searching for a new job. I'm angry too. He can see how difficult it has been for me to see him finally looking for a job because he wants one, especially after ignoring my pleas earlier. I believe it's unfair that he waited until after I gave up on my business and being a stay-at-home mom to take action. Now, this is where I may be the one in the wrong. He argues that he's finally doing what I have been begging him to do, so I shouldn't be unhappy. Should I be happy that he's finally taking action, even if it's too late for my satisfaction? It is understandable that you are frustrated and unhappy in this situation. It seems like your husband has consistently prioritized his own desires and goals over the financial stability and well-being of your family, causing you significant stress and hardship. His behavior of only seeking employment when necessary and then becoming mean and neglectful when he was the breadwinner is concerning. You have made sacrifices for him for many years, including giving up your own career to be a supportive spouse. It is unfair for him to dismiss your concerns and minimize your struggles, especially now that you are in a difficult financial situation. It is natural for you to feel resentful and angry about his sudden interest in finding a job, especially when it comes after you have already given up on your own business and livelihood. It is important for you both to have open and honest communication about your feelings and the impact his actions have had on you and your family. A possible solution might be seeking couples counseling to address these issues and find a way to rebuild trust and understanding. Would I be the antagonist for putting my bad roommate on blast? I have a story of unfortunate events. In June, I signed a very expensive lease with 2 individuals. Towards the end of September, one of my roommates, let's call him John, decided to move to the East Coast and began searching for a replacement with the landlady's approval. This seemed normal and not problematic. Around the same time, the other roommate, let's call him James, left the state. John and I paid our rent for October on time, but James did not. He also did not respond to any of our texts or calls. Several weeks passed with no communication from James. Eventually, the landlord had enough and started charging a late fee. It's important to note that we are all jointly responsible for the rent. If James doesn't pay, John and I are accountable for his share, which is a significant amount. Moreover, James left all of his belongings in his room, creating a ghostly roommate situation. There was no argument or disagreement. He simply disappeared. Becoming worried that something had happened to James, I resorted to desperate measures. I reached out to 2 of his friends on Instagram and asked if they knew his whereabouts. I explained that he owed rent, and if I had to cover his portion, it would be a substantial financial burden. Surprisingly, within an hour, James responded to me for the first time in weeks. He expressed anger towards me for sharing his situation, stating that he would never trust me again. He eventually paid the rent and late fee but continued to ignore our messages. As long as the rent was paid, I didn't mind his silence. Now it's November, and once again James is significantly late on rent. He made a partial payment but refuses to reply to me, John, or the landlord. He has surpassed the grace period, and our landlord mistakenly believes that we are having a major conflict. In reality, James has simply vanished. Meanwhile, John has found a replacement roommate now that he has permanently moved to the East Coast. Sounds good, right? Well, not exactly. Recently, the landlord informed us that legally, James needs to approve the replacement. However, he remains completely silent. He's been absent for nearly 2 months with no response via phone or social media. It feels as though he is holding us hostage. He owes rent, and it seems like he derives some strange satisfaction from frustrating us. I am considering sending numerous messages to all the people James follows on Instagram in an attempt to get him to respond. I would add all of them as friends and publicly call him out as a deadbeat, requesting that anyone who knows him urge him to contact me in order to either exit the lease or pay the full rent. Would it be wrong of me to add all of his acquaintances and publicly expose him in this manner? You have been put in a difficult situation where James, your roommate, has not been paying his share of the rent and has gone AWOL. It is understandable that you are frustrated and desperate to find a resolution. Adding all of his mutuals on social media and publicly calling him out may be a way to get his attention and make him take responsibility for his actions. However, before taking such drastic measures, it would be advisable to consult with your landlord and explore legal options for removing James from the lease or holding him accountable for his part of the rent. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.